Greetings, I'm Len Swanson, CEO of the GETI Group. Today we are having a historical Houston conference on veteran transitional needs that we believe that the Houston community can come together as Houston as one to create the pathways that are necessary for wellness and housing requirements in order for our veterans to finally transition into being productive members of our community. To achieve that, the GETI Group has formulated 3 pillars of transition, which we have known and shown is the only thing and the only pathways that can attain the level of successful and sustainable transition for our veterans. Those pillars represent wellness, housing, and career assessment, guidance, and job placement. But they have to happen all simultaneously, and primarily starting with wellness first. Because until our men and women have wellness, it can't be attained. Our org chart displays the many different subsidiaries that are owned by the GETI Group to help us achieve these different strategic pillars of operations. We are being filmed today by Veteran TV, which is our universal global platform for 20 million veterans to finally have a voice. This is the first in a series of many shows, reality entities, documentaries, and this is part and parcel of what we're going to be calling DC under the microscope, because we have to have a voice that DC hears and sees if we're going to affect the change that we know we have today. Thanks to key members of Congress, of which you'll hear from today, this is all going to become a reality. I'd like to introduce at this time Chairman Miller of the Veterans Affairs Committee, who has a very important message that conveys what we're trying to achieve today.
This committee will continue its oversight. We will continue to try to direct the Department of Veterans Affairs to do their job. And I will tell you, in many instances, they are failing and continuing to fail. And for them to come up at the 12th hour and tell the Congress that they need $3 billion more, or they're going to shut hospitals down, is the most egregious thing they've done to date. They're going to shut every hospital's door because of their silly incompetence. They can't budget right, they can't allocate dollars right, they can't do their job right, and I am not going to protect poor performing employees at the Department of Veterans Affairs. I've tried my best as the chairman of this committee not to be partisan. And I'm not accusing you, anybody on this side, of being partisan. This is about what's right. The veterans deserve better. The status quo doesn't work. Are you going to stand with the veterans or the bureaucrats? I know where your hearts are. It's with the veterans, and of course it's with the employees and the people. But there's some rotten people that work in the department that need to be fired, not protected.
Thank you, Chairman Miller. That was a very important message of what is necessary to now transpire, is if we're going to hold and achieve the accountability that is necessary to attain the programming and support and funding that the GETI Group, as the model for the rest of the nation, is looking to implement here in Houston. What Chairman Miller just spoke about with regards to the passage of H.R. 1994, VA accountability, and the Senate's version, S. 1082, is very key and crucial. As you're going to hear with Glenn Rushing, the Chief of Staff of Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who is a key supporter of the GETI Group and is also an integral part of our overall strategic plan of implementation. I want to introduce at this time Glenn Rushing, Chief of Staff Sheila Jackson Lee.
I've been doing this for almost 30 years now, and it's been a tremendous pleasure getting to know Lynn. He says he's a little red. I think he's purple. He actually would be a purple guy. He has
But
really
I'm
taken
not that.
but he's really has taken on this mission and is making it something. As I said, we come in contact with a lot of groups on Capitol Hill, and I have to say, from deep within, this is one of the most emotionally driven gentlemen that I've ever met, who really believes in what he's doing, and that erases all of the partisanship, because this is about our veterans. I just want to say, on behalf of Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, who would have been here but is detained in Washington right now, that she is committed to our nation's veterans. And want to thank you, Lynn, and the GETI Group for all you're doing and your commitment to our veterans. She has been committed to our veterans for over 20 years that she's been in Congress. And her belief is that no veteran should be going without. All of our veterans should be made whole. And they should be made whole with, based on those three pillars: career assessment, counseling, career certification, and job placement pathways for all transitioning veterans. Our veterans have given all they could for our nation. And there's no reason why veterans should come back home and not be made whole in every aspect of their life, because they've given all that they had. The GETI Group is clearly, and I said the GETI Group is clearly a model that our nation should take heed to. And it should be a model that should go across this whole nation to make sure that our veterans get the services that they need and that they deserve. I would just say, Lynn, that what you're doing is really God's work. And I commend, and the Congresswoman commends the GETI Group for all that you're doing and all that you're going to do. And it's not often that we see people that as passionate as you in Washington.
And loud.
And loud. But you know, that's what Washington needs. People that come in with compassion and that they're loud, because things don't move in Washington unless you have some people that's loud sometimes, because it'll just be white noise. That's not what this group is about. And so on behalf of Congresswoman Jackson Lee, thank you, GETI Group, thank you, Lynn, and thank all of our nation's veterans for the service that they've done for this nation.
My name is Keyshawn Coffey. I'm from the Center for Brain Health, Brain Performance Institute in Dallas, Texas. So the Center for Brain Health is a neuro research center for the University of Texas at Dallas. So anything that happens in research, neuroscience, the Center for Brain Health does. Now, how the Brain Performance Institute came about is that, many times the research that individuals will do normally sits on the shelf for 20 to 40 years, because sometimes scientists do not have funding to actually take their research to actually market itself. So Dr. Sandy Chapman, who's been in neuroscience for the last 30 years, the Center for Brain Health started in 1999. She said, hey, how come we're doing this great research, but we're not actually impacting individuals? So with like-minded individuals, they started the Brain Performance Institute. So what the Brain Performance Institute does, we're the application arm of the Center for Brain Health. So kind of think of it like Nike. You have all the greatest researchers and engineers that develop the programs, and once the programs are developed, they then take them to the Nike training facility, where they then bring athletes from around the world to use their programs, equipment, to actually increase their performance. We have the exact same concept, but in neuroscience. Once the neuroscientists do the actual research to find programs that can actually increase the integrity of the frontal lobe, which we kind of specifically target, we then take that over to the Brain Performance Institute and make it available to the community at large. So I am a veteran, 6.5 years in the Navy. I was a religious program specialist, which meant I was personal security for the United States Navy chaplain. Most of my entire military career I spent FMF, Fleet Marine Force, deployed with Marines, had a buddy actually commit suicide in front of me, and then that was my downswing of getting out of the military itself. How I came involved with the Center for Brain Health, I enrolled at UT Dallas. There was a Marine there saying, hey brother, there's a place that I'm going to that's helping me out with my PTS, doing research, you should probably check it out. So I checked it out. They do what's called cognitive processing therapy, which is kind of the gold standard for the VA. But the research side, which is funded through the DoD, they're actually coupling it with RTMS, which is called repetitive transcranial magnetic stimulation. And with that, it just targets one part of the brain to where if you actually are going into a CPT therapy, it kind of shuts down the physiological responses in the brain if you are actually having a CPT kind of interaction. Now, on the Brain Performance Institute side, we have our high performance brain training that's already been scientifically proven. It's been peer reviewed, so it's not something we just concocted on the side of the street and said, hey, we're going to go help individuals out. We have this great program. It's all peer reviewed outside of us, goes through an IRB, the whole shebang. So how we kind of got into the warrior field is the results that we saw. We actually for individuals that went through the actual cognitive training itself, we actually saw 20 years or 2 decades of brain blood flow go back to the brain itself, an increase in 12% of brain blood flow. We had a TBI individual that actually regained up to 60% of connectivity in white matter between the frontal lobe and the temporal lobe.
Say what TBI is.
Oh, for so those that know, traumatic brain injury. And so what we also seen with the actual high performance brain training is in our middle school brain injury program, we trained over 40,000 students throughout the U.S. We went to the lowest socioeconomic school in the Dallas area, and we actually took their standardized test scores from 30%, almost equal to a privatized school in Dallas. So the state of Texas said, we don't know what the hell you did with these kids, but we want to get this program in as many middle schools as we possibly can. Now, how we got to the warrior space. There was a foundation called the Lyda Hill Foundation. She said, how come this program is not with warriors and the military members and their spouses? Well, as a nonprofit, being a part of the university system, we do not have the funding to just go out, hire staff or resources to go deliver the training in the military community. So Lyda Hill, in a meeting with her, she took out her checkbook, gave us a check for $2 million and said, I want you to pay for every warrior and veteran to go through this program. So our program has stood the test of time. We're actually embedded into the Navy SEAL Platoon Commanders Corps from the East and West Coast. We actively train active duty military members across the U.S. We also train at colleges, universities. How I kind of got involved in the Houston area is I met a guy at U.S. Vets, and this is ultimately where I met Lynn at, and Lynn kind of invited me out here. So I kind of have a few brochures. I know that was kind of really high level. I don't want to take up too much of my time or you guys' time, and if you have any immediate questions, I'm more than happy if we have time to answer 1 or 2 questions about the training or about the Center for Brain Health or the Brain Performance Institute. Okay, all right.
Things dovetail into the GETI plan and how this becomes more holistic. So I'm proud to be I guess an active participant, if you will, and a group that's called the Houston Furniture Bank. Houston Furniture Bank was founded about 23 years ago from MHMRA, and Oli Muhammad has been the director ever since. Oli and Hal Lind are sitting over here to the left of me. To y'all's right, Hal Lind is the president of the board of the directors for the Houston Furniture Bank and been involved for almost that many years as well. So how this works with veterans and why we have them here is to give more exposure to what they do, because this is not only something that can help veterans but the whole city of Houston. And I want you to know who these guys are and what they represent in the city of Houston, because they're always flying under the radar. So we're going to bring them out and have them talk a little bit about the program. But what it is in a nutshell is another avenue for people that want to get rid of some furniture when they're buying new furniture, have a place, an outlet that they can take it, and by virtue of that, they work with about, and I'm not going to steal house thunder, but many of the social programs that are on the voucher program as well. Veterans come in there all the time on voucher programs and they get furniture. The reason why you probably never heard of the Houston Furniture Bank is because they're self-sustaining. One of the very few nonprofits that doesn't ask for money. So if they don't ask for money and you're not constantly getting barraged in the mail by all these wonderful big cards about come to our gala and would you donate here, you know, like I get about a dozen of every week, you don't know who they are. That's the sad part about it 23 years later. They should be equally known and roll off your tongue just like the Houston Food Bank does. And these guys have some great programs going that's for the better good of all of Houston, which will include mattress recycling, which I want them to talk about as well. But for the veterans, this is a perfect outlet and dovetails into once they find a house, then here's the outlet where they can go to get some furniture, mattresses, whatever. So with that said, Hal Lynn, like for Hal to come up, say a few words.
We certainly can't survive without some funding. As Frank had mentioned, we were founded 23 years ago out of necessity. Oli Muhammad was working at Mental Health, Mental Retardation Authority of Harris County as a counselor. And if you can imagine going through an organization like that and actually getting awarded some housing, getting into an apartment, and if you've ever moved into something from, out of, once you moved out of your home with your parents, maybe it was college or maybe it was your first apartment, the excitement runs out pretty quick once you walk into the front door because there's nothing there. It's four walls, maybe running water, and that is it. The story I normally tell is, you could be a single woman that is coming out of a battered women's shelter with her 3 children, and you've gone through all the paperwork, and finally you've got a place to live, and there your kids are sleeping on the floor now. In the shelter they had at least a cot. You're eating on the floor. At least you had a dining room table while you're at the shelter. But it really dovetails right into the veterans. Our organization works with 85 different social service agencies right here in the city of Houston. Once folks get housing, you think maybe all the work is over. We're not alone out there in Houston as an organization that does this, but it's a federal and state mandate on dollars that are contributable to housing that it doesn't include furniture. We were just sitting here before we started this breakfast this morning trying to just figure out maybe even when that rule even started. It must have been for some good reason at some point in time, just like the 10 days waiting for an inspection. But in this day and age, it's just unfathomable that we could spend as a community thousands and tens of thousands of dollars to help out our veterans and then give them less of a shelter than what they probably were even coming from. So with that said, the way that we work is that we collect furniture from all over town. People can call in. We go to their house free of charge to collect it from them. We also work with retailers and manufacturers, hotels that are remodeling, and schools. Right now we're furnishing 150 apartments a month. And that's not a small effort by any stretch of the imagination. But we just acquired a new warehouse over by Hobby Airport, 75,000 square feet, and in the next couple of years our intention is to be able to house and provide furnishings for 500 units per month. Now that does take money, Frank, absolutely. So we are in the middle of a capital campaign, but instead of telling you about that, several years back we looked at our balance sheet and it's like, how can we survive? Every month we trying to figure out how to pay our truck drivers, how to pay our folks that are helping in the warehouse. And our biggest expense was our dumpsters. Our dumpsters contained somewhere in the neighborhood of a couple thousand mattresses a month. As we get things in, we could redistribute things like that, but if they were stain soiled, if you wouldn't sit on it, we don't expect anybody else to sit on it either. So we would throw those away. And through a grant, we started this mattress recycling program. I'm not going to bore you with all the details how we got to where we are now, but the City of Houston Waste Management Department just got an award because we now recycle 100% of all the mattresses that the City of Houston collects through their solid waste collection areas. Now, it sounds like a great feat, and trust me, it really is, but the City of Houston only collects around 4% of all the mattresses that are discarded in the City of Houston on an annual basis. And I'm not going to throw out a bunch of numbers, but mattresses in the Houston area total 600,000 a year that are discarded. So it's hard to, let that sink in a second. 600,000 a year. If you lined them all end to end, that's enough to go from downtown Houston to downtown Dallas, back down to downtown Houston, and then back to Dallas again annually. Okay? If we were to crush all those up into a 27 cubic foot square, which the landfills attempt to do, that would fill Reliant Stadium twice every single year. So if you can imagine just the environmental issue that we have there, but nonetheless, I was going back to our dumpsters. We started a recycling program to where we employ the hard to employ, so the folks that are coming through a homeless project or just maybe being released from one of our prisons. We give them jobs to help them get started, get a resume, but in turn, man, they're tearing these things apart. And we're a little self-sustaining there and making a little bit of profit, but through our recycling program and also an outlet store and donations, we are making it, and we are being able to help these groups. But I feel like our important piece of this puzzle is that it's going to take a lot of different efforts, and it really, I think this is not, you know, the answer, but it's just really part of the overall answer to what we're talking about here today. We are, for the most part, a totally voluntary organization. Frank has a couple of other jobs. This certainly isn't what I do for a living. Hopefully I do some other things well too. So I really appreciate being involved in this group. I think to date, out of those 85 agencies, around 10 of them are veterans agencies, but there's more. There's many, many more. So we're really excited to be part of this mission.
I am Andy Tees. I'm with the Houston Apartment Association. We're a nonprofit trade association that represents the owners and managers of about 500,000 apartments in the Houston area. We are in the education business. That's the main thing that the Houston Apartment Association does. We teach over 100 classes a year in apartment management, maintenance, leasing, finance, fair housing, all sorts of things. One of the things that we teach about is how to engage in the various voucher programs. A lot of our members know how to do Section 8, which is the standard HUD voucher program. Not that many of our members are experienced with VASH, just because historically there have not been that many VASH vouchers on the street for members to know how to deal with. One of the things that we want to do as an association is help our members understand how to better participate in the VASH program, how to deal with some of the challenges that Frank mentioned. Ultimately, we would like to see some of those challenges addressed. Our goal always has been for all of the voucher programs for it to be sort of like the SNAP program. You know, if someone comes into a grocery store with a Lone Star card, there's no difference than if they walked in with a Chase Bank debit card. It's a completely seamless, completely transparent program. With voucher programs, historically, as Frank mentioned, the resident ends up under a separate lease, there's a separate contract, you have to wait for payment, there's separate inspections that are on top of the inspections that the City of Houston Habitability Department, the City of Houston Fire Department already do. And so if there were ways that we could address some of the difficulties in those programs, make them a little easier to use, a little more user-friendly for the veterans and for the housing providers, that's something that the Houston Apartment Association hopefully can help with. So we have a magazine that's widely read. We have seminars that are widely attended. I think there's a lot that we can do to help educate our members about how to better deal with veterans programs. So that's our piece.
Let's move into the City of Liberty and what we're trying to accomplish with that first endeavor. What we noticed when we were talking about the skilled labor force, most of it that these folks would be employed in would probably be anywhere from north to south of Houston, straight up and down, and then on the east side, where all of the LNG plants are going in, where all of the major infrastructure is going in for petrochem, and that goes all the way down into Beaumont, okay? So people are traveling back and forth to Beaumont, Port Arthur, and that area from Houston, Texas. With that being said, we focused on the east side of town and trying to figure out where we can find affordable housing, and soon found out that for at least single-family homes, there really isn't much production building over there. There's very, very few, as a matter of fact. And it's pretty highly occupied by all this skilled labor force. So we took a little trip up to Liberty, Texas, and we met with the city management up there, Gary Brose and Dennis Beasley, and we have found some property up there that we are in, I guess, negotiating terms right now, trying to put together a a plan, if you will, for affordable housing for veterans that would include single family as well as multifamily, as well as a wellness program with a small facility set up that could accommodate the veterans as well. We hope that that thing comes to fruition. But they're here today, and they can talk a little bit about, what's going on up in Liberty, Texas. They're perfectly situated between, people working in the Baytown and the Ship Channel area and all the way to Beaumont. And we feel like if there is one thing that we can do to get something started and it comes to light, then hopefully, again, that'll be a model for other people to want to do the same thing. And the east side and the northeast side of town is a perfect place to do that.
Housing needs are a big thing in our community. We need housing. We have to the south Mount Bellevue, Port Arthur. We have the jobs out there, and so we're an ideal place to live. You get the country along with the city. You can get into the city really quick. So we're excited. The city has opened up 300 acres. We have built the first new street in 20 years, right through the middle of this property. So we are excited to work with GETI and see if we can make this a dream come true. Thank you.
I'm Dennis Beasley. I'm also with the City of Liberty Economic Development arm of it. And as Lynn said a while ago, this is a red, white, and blue project. This is an American project. And what better place to kick it off than in Liberty? And we're extremely excited about working with the GETI Group, looking forward to finding solutions to these problems and having GETI Group in our city. It's a unique city, small town feel, but access to the large communities where the jobs are. I mean, what better place for this to kick off than in Liberty? And we're excited about it. Thank you.
Toyota, by definition, we define as affordable, reliable, dependable transportation. What Don McGill intends to do is be a facilitator, have veterans, and the thing is, we're not limited to the Houston market, if you will. We call it PMA, but primary market area. The solution has to be scalable, and in order, you have to have a delivery network that's nationwide. Toyota has that. Toyota did one other thing that I think is their commitment to veterans. That was called Toyota Mobility Program. What that does is the first industry standard factory installed auto access seat. And what that does is it rotates 90 degrees, comes down, allows a veteran to be picked up from outside the vehicle and delivered into the vehicle, and with automation. Also, Toyota has partnered with a lot of other companies to allow the vehicle to be modified and adaptive to the vehicle's, the veteran's scenario. For instance, you got a fold-out ramp, and then that's so you can roll the wheelchair in as well, just get in. Also, there are removable seats for the veterans and have remote control where the veteran can actually drive the vehicle with their hands. So all of these things and all these technologies are being incorporated, and Toyota has a reimbursement program for the things that a veteran was. Let's say a veteran goes out and gets this adaptive equipment, Toyota will do a reimbursement for up to $1,000 up front to say, hey, okay, after they get this vehicle modified for them. So there are a lot of different technologies out there that can allow a veteran to be flexible and independent, because they still want that as a human being, to be able to do the things that you were used to do, okay? The other thing that is an issue when it comes to acquiring vehicles, just like Frank with housing, you have to be able to show that you have a job. And that's a significant issue. And so what we're doing, I know Lynn is working on training programs, and so what we're doing is working with the banks to say, okay, if they have a job letter, all right, saying they are going to be employed after their training is complete, then allow these individuals to get a vehicle. So that's what we're working on, low down payment or no down payment. But Toyota, by definition, means affordable, dependable, and reliable transportation, and that's what we intend to provide for our veterans.
Okay, so that pretty much, I think, wraps up the program for at least what I've got, for sure, and maybe what Lynn's got as well. I guess just to kind of summarize what I've seen, it seems to be very fractionalized out there. A lot of people trying to do a lot of things on their own. A lot of individual groups, a lot of social groups that Houston Furniture Bank deals with. A lot of these people don't talk to each other. They don't collaborate with each other for the better good of one program. What Lynn's trying to do is put a program together that is of collaboration, where everybody can come together, and hopefully we can have a consistent effort in trying to speak to a lot of different needs of the veteran to get them to the place they need to go, rather than just getting them to one position and then they don't ever move from that position because they just, they got to go from one group to this group to that group. The GETI Group hopefully will be able to speak to that. Hopefully it'll become a model. Hopefully the rest of the nation will benefit from that as well. We appreciate you all coming out here. We appreciate you taking an interest and an active role in this endeavor, and I just want to thank you for that.
I want to thank everybody that was here today for GETI's first annual Veterans Wellness and Housing Summit. Your participation was very critical in launching what needs to be done. I know as a Vietnam veteran myself, suffering from the effects of Agent Orange, how critical the programs that we're looking at implementing today is going to be so crucial for our veterans to finally transition successfully and being productive members of our society. I want to thank the sponsors of today's event, the GETI Group, BBT Banking, Don McGill Toyota, Empowered Marketing and Consulting, Ministry on Demand, and of course, we have to thank our production team, Provocon Studios, which is a key integral part of why this was able to successfully happen today. Thank you, and this is just the beginning.